Hi, so in video 1185 I introduced you to this thing, which is the fan motor from a BMW. And this fan motor is a brushless DC, which is awesome because it gives a three-phase AC output that we can rectify into DC. Loads of good comments, including make a dynapod out of it. Now, if you follow the dynapod series, you know that they're pedal-powered machines which were based on exercise bicycles adapted to a whole range of jobs. And what we've got here, obviously, is a bit of exercise bicycle. So all I've done is chop the seat off and remove the cover, and I've sawn off one of the pedals because the other pedal then becomes a crank handle, so we can crank this by hand. If I'd left the other pedal on, we obviously could have pedalled it, but it's going to be hand cranked. Now you might notice this thing. This thing is the flywheel, and it's going to keep on spinning for quite a while because it's a flywheel. Now, a curious thing about flywheels, or rather good thing about flywheels, is we can make them into a drive wheel. Now, if you watch the video on how to make gears and cogs out of timing belts, you know that I love gluing a timing belt onto something because it becomes a massive cog. And how easy is that going to be to glue the timing belt on here, then glue a bit of timing belt on there, bring the two to each other, and we'll basically have a geared drive. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to chop this off and glue it onto the flywheel. So when you cut the timing belt and try it on, the chances are it won't fit, and that's kind of depressing in its own way, I suppose, but you're usually not that far out. Now you can see we've got I can see I've got about 2mm or so, so I need to take off some of the surface here or add something on, so a strip of tape, or wear the surface down so that I can close that 2mm gap. Now obviously I don't have to take much off because 2mm a gap off there is a tiny bit off that circumference, and you have a number of choices. One is get yourself a lot of high grit sandpaper, turn on a sander, hold it against the wheel and spin it like this. As long as you hold the sander true and you keep that wheel turning, you're not going to ruin it. If you've got less patience than a sandpaper, you can use an angle grinder and do exactly the same thing. And the final thing you can do is get yourself a sharpening stone and some oil. I mean, all it really takes is patience, and trying to hold the thing square so that you don't ruin the trueness of it. But you're taking so little off, the chances are you're not going to. And it's probably a good explanation of why I'm also so dirty. Because I do this kind of thing all of the time to true up wheels. This one's a big old lump of metal, so it takes a little bit more effort, but we've only got like a couple of millimeters to take down, so it's not that problematic. The hardest thing in here is getting these cogs right, just getting the diameter right so that they mesh. Now we want to make that a cog as well. We could grind that down, but that's going to be a bit of a pain. The better thing to do is build something like that up, because I've cut the piece of material and it goes round, it's just slightly too big, so I need a liner in there. Now what works really well, bicycle in a tube. It's already rubber and we can glue the rubber to the rubber, and then we can sand it if we need to get that rubber the right thickness so that we can get it around there, and again we just glue it on. So after a little bit of fiddling about, we've made two cogs. We should be able to just bolt that on there like that, and we'll have ourselves a generator. Luckily enough, these are M6 and threaded, so I'll make a little connection here and then one here, and that's all it should be. Okay, so there it is, bolted in its little cog arrangement onto this flywheel. I've actually got it connected to this half-watt LED display panel here, lighting panel. I'm going to crank it up in a minute. Now, obviously, there are a million ways you can go with this. You could do gen drive, fan belt drive, rope drive, intermeshing cogs, friction drive. There's just a lot of ways. Also, I've only got this one section of gearing here, big cog, little cog, big cog, little cog. You could change the gearing and you would get more out of it. Now this gives out sort of about 5 volts or so, a couple of amps when it's going full revs. It's got a flywheel on it, which is kind of cool. So If you're interested in this kind of thing, then really the answer is to make one and improve it yourself. The thing is to have a look at what you could do. All we're really looking at here is that that basic principle really works quite well. Anyway, let me crank it up. I don't know about you, but I think that's actually awesome. So I thought I would share that with you. Here's what I actually was thinking when it comes to this. Then obviously we are looking at changing the gear ratios. If we change the gear ratios and a heavier flywheel, of course, we're going to get more out of it. Because this thing really depends on the speed at which it turns. Anyway, I thought I'd share an actual implementation with you. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and please remember to subscribe.